It was the 30th day of December, 1880. A shipyard in England builds a new iron-hulled steamship, the SS Nemesis. Destined for the Australian coast, this 73-meter vessel was built for a tough life, hauling coal between the bustling port cities of Newcastle and Melbourne. But fast forward 24 years later, on July 9, 1904, the SS Nemesis, loaded with a cargo of coal and coke, embarked on a journey from Newcastle to Melbourne. But little did she know that would be her last. The ship encountered a raging storm off the coast of Wollongong, 50 miles south of Sydney. Her captain, Alex Lusher, who was a seasoned sailor with his 32 crew members, made a desperate plea for help, but none came. Hours later, she vanished, leaving the world with a mystery that has lasted for 120 years. The SS Nemesis was built in Whitby, United Kingdom, by Thomas Turnbull and Sons. The 240-foot-long cargo ship was a brigantine-rigged single-screw steamer powered by a compound engine and could reach speeds of 12 knots. Displacing nearly 1,400 tons, the ship was 10 meters wide and had a draft of 5.5 meters. On the 1st of May, 1881, the ship arrived in Port Phillip Bay after a voyage of 76 days. The SS Nemesis was registered in Melbourne under Huddart Parker Limited. She was intended to work as a collier on the Melbourne, Newcastle intercolonial trade. Huddart Parker later rented a wharf space in Darling Harbour, and its vessels began operating only on the Melbourne to Sydney route. By 1981, Huddart Parker fitted the ship with passenger accommodation. The ship had no first class, which made it less expensive, but she had more comfort, which was better for poor passengers traveling with her. The SS Nemesis carried passengers and cargo between Sydney and Melbourne. During the 1890s gold rush, the Nemesis was placed on the Western Australian run to transport passengers traveling for the gold rush. The ship served as a passenger carrier for most of the 19th century. However, by the end of the century, she was converted back to its original purpose of transporting coal and was then operating on the East Coast. On Friday, the 8th of July, 1904, the SS Nemesis, under the control of Captain Alex Lusher, left Newcastle for Melbourne with her hold full of coal and coke. This was the journey that would change her history. As the Nemesis sails south of Sydney, winter's icy grip tightens on the southern hemisphere. The once calm Tasman Sea was now being disturbed by unpredictable currents. A ferocious storm rolls in, unleashing gale-force winds and waves as high as the mountains. The ship, despite its iron hull, was no match for such fury, as she was battered and tossed around the sea. The 32 crew members on the ship struggled to maintain control, but the relentless pounding of the storm made their efforts fruitless. At some point, the SS Nemesis appeared to have turned or was driven back towards Sydney. Captain Lusher, in a desperate plea for help, was able to send out 3 distress signals. Rockets were being fired, and these rockets were seen off Port Hacking, but no help was coming through. The residents of Port Hacking reported seeing rockets or flares in the dark off the coast of Port Hacking, and ominously the sound of continuous horn blasts of a vessel in distress. But no positive sightings were made due to poor visibility. There were also no reports of any ship in distress by port authorities. The storm finally overpowered the SS Nemesis, overwhelming her engine and causing the ship to sink so fast that they didn't get the chance to deploy her lifeboats. The 32 crew members, including one female stewardess by the name of Mrs. Hyland, a 56-year-old from Canada, were trapped on board as they faced their terrifying fate. The ship vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind no survivors. The last confirmed sighting of the SS Nemesis was by the SS Marlou, who passed within a mile of the vessel off Wollongong at 2 p.m. on Saturday the 9th of July. Marlou identified no distress or damage to the steamer, but noted that it was traveling at a low speed of around 1 knot in poor weather conditions. The storm was described as a hurricane and was regarded as the heaviest storm experienced for many years. The strong southerly gale increased in fury during the afternoon and evening of Saturday the 9th of July. Shipping in Sydney Harbour was in chaos, with many vessels deciding not to head out and some racing to regain safety at the harbour. Any vessel on the sea on that day was observed to be lost in mountainous waves. Days later, news of the missing ship reached the families of the crew back in England, Australia, and Canada. Weeks passed with agonizing silence. Then came a glimmer of hope. Debris and bodies from the Nemesis began washing ashore on the northern end of Cronulla Beach near Wollongong, south of Sydney. The grim reality of the shipwreck sets in, and a search for the missing vessel begins. The wreckage revealed that the upper masts, rigging, spars, and deck hatches had been carried away intact. The remains of the ship suggested a catastrophic event. According to research, there appeared to be no attempt by the crew to take to the lifeboats, life buoys, or don life belts. Many of the ship's life-preserving appliances were found. Also, the ship's 30-foot-long lifeboat was one of the first pieces to come ashore. It was branded number 2 and inscribed with the name Huddart Parker and Company. The identification of the shipwreck indicates that it had struggled to make any headway. Perhaps the ship was wrecked soon after that night. It was recorded that any attempt to turn the vessel around and head to the safety of Port Hacking or Sydney would have left it extremely vulnerable due to the strong wind. It is likely that the storm broke open the vessel's hatches, causing its engine room to be flooded with seawater, thereby extinguishing the fires that powered the boilers and rendering it completely helpless. The fragmented nature of the wreckage that washed ashore suggested the decks and hull were torn apart during the storm. Over the following weeks, several bodies washed ashore at Cronulla Beach or near Boat Beach. They were identified as William Cool, a 32-year-old, and Jay Linklater, a 34-year-old from Melbourne. Both of them were seamen. Another was James Morrison, the ship's second engineer. They couldn't identify 2 other crew members, but they believed one might have been a fireman based on the clothes he was wearing. All the recovered bodies were buried in the Sutherland Cemetery. 2 of the officers who died on the SS Nemesis, Frank Reno and Jim Morrison, had previously survived the wrecking and total loss of another Huddart Parker and co-steamer, the SS Enigma, off New Zealand in 1902. While the search was ongoing, more wreckages of the ship kept washing up on beaches north of Sydney's coastline. The poor weather conditions also made it difficult to search for the vessel in the subsequent weeks after the incident. After a few weeks, no more wreckage or bodies washed ashore, and active searches along the coastline and at sea ceased. For over a century, finding the final resting place of the SS Nemesis had remained a mystery. More than a century later, in May 2022, a team working for a remote sensing company, Subsea Professional Marine Services, was on a seemingly unrelated mission, searching for lost shipping containers off the coast of Sydney. Little did they know they were about to stumble upon a piece of history. On the night of the discovery, a technician monitoring the sonar picked up a strange anomaly on the screen. It looked like a shipwreck. Further investigation confirmed their suspicions. They had found a large, unidentified vessel resting on the seabed. News of the discovery reached the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment, which launched an investigation. The investigation involved advanced underwater cameras and multi-beam echo sounders. These sophisticated tools provided high-resolution images and a detailed map of the wreckage. In September 2023, Australia's National Science Agency was able to capture the underwater imagery that definitively showed the distinctive features of the steamship. Months later, after comparing the data with historical records, the experts finally identified the wreck as the long-lost SS Nemesis. The news sent shockwaves through the historical community and brought a sense of closure to the families and around 40 children who lost their parents in the wreck. After 120 years of mystery, the final chapter of the story of the SS Nemesis can finally be written. The discovery of the SS Nemesis isn't just about solving a historical mystery, it provides a valuable archaeological resource. The wreck, preserved in the cool depths of the ocean, could offer insights into ship construction techniques, daily life aboard a cargo vessel in the early 20th century, and perhaps even clues about the fateful voyage. The Australian government is committed to protecting the wreck site, to prevent looting, and ensure that any potential artifacts or objects on board are kept intact. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to share it. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and I'll see you guys in the next one.